When I was in college, I took out student loans. Budgeting wasn't really on my radar because how can you budget with borrowed money? But I really wished I would have instilled those budgeting habits early on because it would have helped me minimize my debt load. So in this video, we're going to be talking about how you can budget as a college student, and we're going to take a look at a couple sample budgets to help you stay financially fit in those college days. Hey, what's up guys? It's Justine with The College Investor, investing and personal finance for millennials. So there's really two ways that you can break down your budget when you're in college. And in the most simplest of ways, it breaks down to tuition and then everything else. So we're going to be covering tuition and then your living expenses. Now, tuition will probably come from savings, scholarships, or student loans. So you really don't have to worry about coming up with the tuition money right there on the spot with a part-time job because it's going to be coming from all of these outside resources. Now, if you are working on paying and cash flowing for tuition as you go, a great way to start would be with free money such as scholarship and grants, and then thinking about how you can pick up extra income opportunities along the way. So when you're managing your variable income and expenses, because things are all over the place when you're in college, so you may be able to secure a full-time job during the summer and make a couple $1,000s, and then during the school year you may be limited to just a part-time job making a couple $100 a month. So a good idea would be to stockpile as much cash as you can during the summer months or during winter break so that you can live off of those savings during the school year. Now, breaking it out into the simplest of terms with tuition and then everything else, let's actually break that down even further because you want to have a pulse on where your money is going. So first is the tuition and fees, but then you'll want to think about things like health and medical. Are you still on your parents' health insurance? And then what about any kind of doctor's visits where you might be responsible for a copay or you have prescription medications that you need to take? Those types of things need to be accounted for, or you may be responsible totally for your health insurance. Oftentimes, a lot of college campuses actually provide student health insurance, so you may want to look into that as you're budgeting for the school year. Next, you'll want to consider rent and utilities. This is obviously going to be way cheaper if you have roommates, which is exactly what I did throughout my entire time in college when I wasn't living in the dorms. I had a roommate or roommates, and it was so much cheaper to budget for utilities and rent when I could share it with other people. Next, you'll want to consider your cell phone plan and your internet bills. Internet could be split amongst your roommates, but think about your cell phone plan. If you're still under your parents' plan or you got kicked off, you'll want to check out cheap alternatives to cell phone data plans. Next is transportation, which can get costly if you have to bring your car to school. Remember that a lot of college campuses will charge for residential parking, or you may have to have a parking pass either for parking your car on the street in the city or parking it on campus. That can really add up. You may want to consider getting a bike or just straight walking, which is what I ended up doing most of the time. I would walk to campus and save money on gas and maintenance for my car. The next thing that you'll want to consider in your budget is food. We all love to go out to eat, or the student union food court, but it can get really expensive. So you can end up going to a lot of student organization clubs and activities, which typically have free pizza, or you can get a job waitressing, which is what I did, and I ended up getting a lot of free food from my job at the end of the night. So that is one way that you can budget for food cheaply, or just sharing that bill and responsibility with your roommates so that you guys can have potluck dinners. Then you'll want to also budget for things like fun, and then of course textbooks and school materials like a laptop or any kind of software that you might need for your classes. Those are all things that you should typically look for in a budget as a college student. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at some sample budgets to give you an idea of how this will all work. First, we'll take a look at the community college student living at home. So Community College Callan, let's call him that, is working on an associate's degree from a local community college before transferring to a state university. So he drives a used pickup to school and work, but he still owes money on the car. And then during the school year, he works 15 hours per week as a lifeguard, earning $16 per hour. And then during the summer, he manages a landscaping crew and earns $22 per hour for the full-time job. So we can take a look at his income opportunities, and then he also has scholarships for $650, which brings the total to an annual income of $18,800. So now let's take a look at his expenses. So he has just over $3,000 in tuition annually. He pays $450 annually for health and medical, and his textbooks and school equipment is around $700 for the year. Now, his monthly expenses include $150 per month for rent and utilities because he has multiple roommates, and then his cell phone and internet plan is $80 a month. And then because he owes money on the pickup truck, that plus gas and maintenance costs $300 a month, and then he's looking at $200 per month for food. Now, total expenses excluding tuition is $16,360, but including tuition is $18,280. That means his budget is under by $520, which he has left over in his budget for savings. Next, let's consider the scholarship student who is living on campus at a private liberal arts school. All right, so Scholarship Sally, let's call her that, has a scholarship that covers 100% of the tuition at her pricey liberal arts school. And so the school's in a small town, and she works on campus at the library. Now, she works 8 hours per week, earning $12 per hour. And then she also does some online ACT prep classes, earning $40 an hour, working about 4 hours per week. So if we take a look at all of her income opportunities, excluding the scholarships, her total annual income is just over $19,000 plus the $47,000 in scholarships. So that covers the entire cost of her annual tuition. She pays $200 per year for health and medical since she's on her parents' health insurance, and she pays about $2,000 for textbooks and school equipment because she is at this private liberal arts school. Now, she lives on campus, so her rent and utilities are all covered under campus housing, which is $5,700 for the year. Now, she just pays $215 per year for cell phone and internet because she has a paid off phone and she uses a cheap cell phone service like Mint Mobile. Her transportation costs are only $50 per month because she rides a bike and then she just carpools with friends. Her food expense is kind of high. It's $650 per month on average. So she has an on-campus meal plan, and she also buys groceries, and then she'll also eat out during her internship. And then fun is about $200 per month. So her total expenses excluding tuition is just under $19,000, and that's the same for including tuition since she doesn't have to cover that. So she actually has a net savings of $125 per year. So in both of these scenarios, the college student was actually saving money, but let's take a look at a couple examples in which that student might actually be over budget or losing money. So the next example is a public university student splitting apartment with friends. So this student has side gigs that come out to roughly $300 per week, whether they're selling things on eBay or picking up some part-time weekend positions. It amounts to $300 per week. Plus they're a nanny that makes $18 an hour, and they get a small stipend from their parents amounting to $2,000 and a few scholarships amounting to $1,800, which brings their total annual income to $26,960. So let's take a look at their annual expenses. Their annual expenses include tuition for $8,000, health and medical, which is $1,900. Their rent and utilities is $520 per month. And then their cell phone and internet is $215 per year, and transportation is around $1,300 for the year. Next, food and fun. Food is $350 per month and fun is $300 per month. So the total expenses excluding tuition is $17,455. Including tuition, that amounts to $25,455, which means they have a deficit of $2,295. So most likely she is going to have to pick up other extra income opportunities or reduce her expenses, or at the very bottom of the list, may have to pull out a small student loan to cover the difference. All right, last, let's take a look at Study Abroad Steve, public university student studying abroad in Spain. So he's doing a semester abroad where he won't work, but for the rest of the school year, he'll referee some soccer games, and then during the summer, he'll earn money working full-time as a janitor at a gym. So let's take a look at the income. $400 per week as a referee, $16 per hour as a janitor full-time during the summer, and then some money from his parents amounting to $3,000. So his total annual income is $23,480. Let's take a look at his expenses now. Tuition is $9,400 and health and medical is $300 for the year. His monthly expenses are $600 for rent and utilities, $20 for cell phone and internet, transportation is $300, and then food and fun is $200 and $500 per month. I mean, if you're going to be living in Spain, you best be using some money to go travel around the country and just travel in Europe in general. So total expenses excluding tuition is $20,040, and total expenses including tuition is $29,440, which leaves a deficit of $8,960. So the semester abroad is probably the most expensive in this case. Not saying that studying abroad is typically expensive, because there are exchange programs in which it can make it a little bit cheaper. But having a budget in place can show in this scenario that we're going to have to figure out some other ways to bring in income or consider a student loan in order to cover the difference. Now, just because you borrow money and your income is fluctuating all over the board doesn't mean that you don't have to budget. Doing these types of walkthroughs or just monitoring your monthly income and expenses as a college student is going to set the foundation for financial success in the future and after you graduate. Now, for more information on how to pay off student loans quickly and effectively, be sure to visit and check out our resources at thecollegeinvestor.com.